Hello, friends of facts, and welcome to 5 Minutes of Science, where we present exciting research from scientific papers. With every video, we will take a look at another inspiring paper from the fields of sustainability, toxicology, chemistry, climate change, or nutrition. Today's topic is again alternatives to animal testing, but this time we will focus on the long road to animal-free chemical testing, with the regulatory acceptance of alternative test methods as a milestone. In 2012, Shifeles and co-authors published a paper on the regulatory acceptance and use of the so-called 3R methods. 3R stands for the reduction, replacement and refinement of animal testing. Therefore, 3R methods are also called alternative methods. In this video, you will find out which drivers push towards reforming the traditional animal-based system and which barriers protect it. You will also get some ideas how the regulatory acceptance of alternative methods might be improved in future. First, let's take a step back and find out why regulatory acceptance is important. In order to ensure environmental and human safety, chemicals must be tested before they can be commercially released. Since this is a requirement laid down in the laws for the regulation of chemicals, this process is called regulatory testing. Regulatory testing is conducted and paid for by industry, but critically evaluated by government-employed regulators. Traditionally, regulatory testing is conducted using animal experiments. In 2017, 23% of all animal tests in the EU were conducted for regulatory testing. The regulatory acceptance of alternative methods is therefore key to the reduction of animal testing. To find out what drives and prevents the regulatory acceptance of alternative methods, Shifeles and co-authors interviewed experts from EU and US regulatory authorities, industry and academia. In addition, they attended international meetings on regulatory testing. Then, they condensed their findings into a multi-level model. The model interlinks different levels of complexity and size. The niche level considers individual people and methods. This is the level where new alternative methods are developed. The regime level includes organizations, products, institutions and regulations. Here, rules and regulations are at work. A new method from the niche level may well enter and gain some acceptance, but without replacing the current standard practice. The landscape level is basically us, the society. It is formed by our political culture, social values, world views, economy, demography and natural environment. If a new method is accepted at this level, it may well challenge and alter the current standard practice. In the niche level, individual people take small steps which ultimately contribute to the regulatory acceptance of alternative methods. People who drive acceptance are policy entrepreneurs, who are clever business people, seeing an opportunity by coupling problems, solutions and policies, when the moment is just right for their idea. Another factor influencing people at the niche level is alternative method education and training. Younger scientists are more inclined to accept and trust alternative methods, which were included in their training and education. At the same time, past education and experience predominantly using animals and lack of alternative method experience are barriers to regulatory acceptance. Another important aspect to consider at the niche level are the alternative methods themselves. Naturally, their advantages act as drivers for regulatory acceptance. Potentially, they can improve the prediction of toxicity and overcome the current limitations of animal testing. Those limitations include their lack of formal validation, time-consuming test procedures and high variability in results. In many cases, it is not even understood how results observed in animals translate to humans. Related to the test methods, there are also a list of substantial barriers. A specifically nasty one is the tedious validation process of alternative methods. While validation ensures a method's reliability, it is also time-consuming and costly. Moreover, alternative methods are often validated by comparing them to animal tests, regardless of their own inherent drawbacks. Another barrier is that alternative methods often lack the complexity of an entire organism. Therefore, they may not always be used as standalone methods, but need to be combined with other alternative methods. Finally, in some cases, there is still a lack of understanding of the underlying biological mechanisms. While it is acceptable for the animal model to be a black box, this is not commonly tolerated for alternative methods. We have now reached the regime level, with variables influencing the acceptance of alternative methods on a larger scale. First, there are drivers and barriers related to organizations. Money is always a good incentive. Therefore, the often quicker and cheaper conduction of alternative tests drives their acceptance and use. So do frontrunners coming from either industry, regulatory authorities, or academia, who are among the first to apply and advertise alternative methods. The main barrier on the organizational level is the unequal distribution of information, especially between industry and regulatory authorities. On the one hand, regulators have more in-depth knowledge on the relevant legal requirements and precise criteria concerning alternative method evaluation and acceptance. On the other hand, industry has more data and practical experience with the conduction and evaluation of alternative methods. Second, the regulated products may be related to barriers of regulatory acceptance. The higher the perceived risk, the louder the call for strict regulations of a specific product will be. Also, industry certainly does not want any incidents related to their products. Therefore, there is a fear of changing a running system for the worse. Third, drivers and barriers related to institutions influence the regulatory acceptance and use of alternative methods on the regime level. Obviously, communication between the relevant institutions, specifically industry and regulatory authorities, drives regulatory acceptance. Especially neutral platforms to exchange information on alternative methods can be helpful. But there are also many barriers related to institutions. Foremost is the elevation of the animal test to the status of gold standard. There is even a deeply rooted collective memory of dominant practices. Semi-coherent rules seem to apply which are difficult to understand for outsiders and which are mostly based on experiences. And in the light of the long history of animal testing, the current organizational infrastructure is largely centered around it. The final aspect of the regime level refers to regulations, legal texts which provide the framework for the regulatory evaluation of chemicals. Some of those legal texts are devoted to animal welfare. They are strong drivers of regulatory acceptance. For example, the EU has its own directive for the protection of laboratory animals for scientific purposes. It is important for different countries to apply the same harmonized criteria with regard to regulatory testing. Otherwise, industry might hang on to the conventional animal model as long as they still have to conduct these tests for a single regulatory authority. Consequently, diverse and non-harmonized regulations are considered barriers. We made it through the niche and regime level to finally arrive at landscape level, representing society. Society drives the acceptance of alternative methods by their concern for animal welfare. We do not actually want animals to suffer for the testing of chemicals. However, the growing attention to animal welfare cannot outweigh the concerns related to human health protection. Thus, risk aversion is a strong barrier for the acceptance of alternative methods. Consequently, regulators fear to be held accountable for potentially wrong decisions, and since there is no guarantee that the quality of regulatory assessment will not be compromised by the use of alternative methods, regulators prefer to avoid litigation by resisting changes. When it comes to breaking barriers and driving the regulatory acceptance of alternative methods forwards, small steps may well lead to a landslide. The authors advise three main steps to improve the regulatory acceptance of alternative methods. First, the unequal distribution of information between industry and regulators shall be minimized by encouraging industry to share their data and by offering alternative method training to regulators. At the same time, we need to create platforms where regulators and industry can share their experience and knowledge and discuss in a neutral setting. Second, the authors suggest to gradually grow new methods out of old ones, and to accept that in many cases, several alternative methods need to be combined to replace one animal test. Third, we need more individuals or organizations which act as risk-taking actors or boundary spanners and who are willing to take a certain risk or connect and mediate between parties. That was quite a fast ride through the complicated world of regulatory toxicology and non-animal testing. For now, we will leave this topic behind and give it a rest. Coming up next is diets and how sustainable and friendly to the environment they are. Have a look at the link in the lower right corner if you're interested. For references and further reading, please see the video's description, which refers to the numbers and brackets throughout the presentation. Finally, we appreciate every like and comment. Tell us your opinion. What else do you think is important to speed up alternative method acceptance? Thanks for watching and see you soon.